All right, yesterday when we got finished, I had that all gouged out and had some putty on top of it. I've sanded it and filed it, and right now I got a little putty drying on there for a few marks that I had left. So what I'll do is I'll sand it again, prime it, check for some more spots, and then should be done. Get it ready for paint. I got to go back in and paint that a reflective surface again. I've been hard at it today. I've gone ahead and added my Nav Lights. I call them Nav Lights. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I got to look it up. But anyway, the lights that indicate port and starboard on the vehicle. Your red lights are your port side, green are your starboard, for how the pilot is facing. I also bought a little strobe from the hobby store. It goes on a train. It's just a clear strobe, and I glued it in there. All of these I super glued in. I drilled a hole and super glued the LEDs in, and then what I did is I wired my ground together all the way around coming out the back, and then I ran separate hots going to each LED. And what I'm going to do is when I run the hots back into the base, I'm going to put my resistors in the base instead of having them in the craft to cut down on how much room you need. But this little strobe here, all of these I just super glued in. It pokes through the top there. Let me zoom in on that and see if you can see it a little better. If I can get it centered up on the camera. But that little strobe peeks through right there. And I think that's the only one I'm going to have. I'm not going to go crazy on this one. I'll have the strobes everywhere they need to be on the Voyager, but I just wanted to try it. But it looks really good flashing, and it pokes through a little bit. So anyway, that's all ready to go there now. And also, I know normally you don't have your little nav lights flashing, but I'm going to build a flashing circuit, and I'm going to make these red and green ones flash, and they'll be on a separate circuit from the strobe, so it'll look neat that you've got different lights flashing at different times on it. And then I picked up, where's my kit at here? I picked these strip LEDs up at Radio Shack. They're $30, is a big huge roll, and I've already tried these. I've got a strip here made up. I've tried these, and what I'm going to do is put these in the nacelles, and I'm going to wrap some inside the saucer section. And when I tried them, if I wrapped them around like that in there, it glowed really good inside of the ship. And this section here, I tried this too. If I have the LEDs laying in the bottom like this, it makes the main hull light up really nicely. So that's how I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to have a strip in there. I'm going to have a strip in each nacelle facing up. And then I'm going to have a strip wrapped around inside here to light up the saucer. So everything will be lit up really well for the windows. And then on the nacelles, what I did is I put my little nav lights, let me zoom that in there. I put my little nav lights in there on the top and the rear. And I know this probably doesn't go with the actual vehicle on television or in the movies, but that's how I wanted to do it, so that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, when I put the nacelles on the body, I'll tie these wires together right there, and that'll light those up, and those will be flashing also with the front off of that flashing circuit that I'm going to build. And so I'll have two separate sets of wires going in there for that. And I just realized that I only have one set of wires feeding in there. So I'm not going to be able, see, there you go, there's something you can learn from my mistake. since I only have one set of wires going up into the nacelles, I'm not going to be able to have two different circuits, one flashing the nav lights and one keeping the engine lights constant. So in that case, what I'm going to do is wire all of those together and just leave those nav lights constant in the back. So see, there's something I need to remember when I do the Voyager. So if you do this and you do want them separate, make sure you run two sets of wires up into your nacelles. So there you go on that. And what I'm going to do, now that I've got this done, let me zoom that back out a little bit because I can't watch the camera and do this at the same time. What I'm going to do here is, now that I've got all this wired up, I'm going to put my LEDs in here to light the saucer section. Well, before I do that, I'm going to paint all this silver. I checked the paint. The paint is non-conductive. So when I paint all this, I'm going to protect all my connections. This is, you know, I'm only running 12 volts, no amperage, so it's not going to jump, you know, it's not going to short out or anything. So what I'm going to do is paint this. What it'll do is it'll light block the back of these LEDs, and it'll also protect all these connections. So when I get done with the painting of that, I'm going to get I got to figure out how I'm going to get that strip of LEDs sitting in there, glued up, and then we can go from there. I'll probably go ahead and put the saucer section together and have it all ready to go. Anything else I can think of? I'm going to go ahead and start painting that. I'm going to go ahead and paint these guys, get the backs of them painted and the connections painted. Get the paint wiped off of the engines so that the light can come through. And that's where I'm going to be at for now. One other thing I wanted to mention, because I hate that when people tell you about stuff and they don't tell you what they got. The kit that I got for the little strobe, it's some brand Circuitron or something like that. The part number is FLW, white strobe. It's a 1.4 millimeter lamp. Got it at my local Hobby Town, USA. I don't know if they're nationwide, but anyway, it's in the train section. That already has the little built-in circuit to make the strobe flash, and it only runs on 1.5 volts. So I'm gonna, since I'm running my system on 12 volts, I'm gonna have to put a little voltage regulator in. These LEDs that I got are Miniatronics Corp. They're sold at my local hobby store. They're the little micro mini LEDs. They come with the resistors already, and they will operate, I think it's from 1.5 volts up to 24 volts. I don't know. It's a huge range that they'll operate on with the resistor. So if you put the resistor in line, you can just run it off of 12 volts and they work great. So anyway, thought I'd let you know which ones I got. Those are the 1.5 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter. And I've got green and red. That's all they had. They didn't have clear. I really wanted some clear ones. And again, the Radio Shack ones, they're hanging up back there in my store. They're hanging up in the over by where the breadboards and all that stuff is for building electronics. But anyway, just wanted to let you know that's where I got those. So the strip LEDs I got from Radio Shack, and the little micro mini LEDs I got from the hobby store. And the micro minis with the resistor and the Radio Shack strip LEDs will run on 12 volts. Another thing too about these strip LEDs that I found out, I'm sure I could change the circuitry a little bit, but they're made where you can cut them off 3 at a time. That's as small as you can go. You can't just cut one off and put 12 volts to it and it'll work. It makes a loop in the circuit and comes back or something. And anyway, It just doesn't work if you just cut one off and try to put 12 volts to it. You have to do a minimum of 3. This whole roll will light up on 12 volts and operate just fine. But like I said, in tight spaces you can only cut it down to 3 LEDs. So anyway, the strips came from Radio Shack and the other ones came from the hobby store. So there you go.